AP's World History students, our aims for this evening, hopefully you're with a group of friends, are to be able to do or recite the following at the end of our next 30 minutes together. And that's going to be to describe the basic social, political, and economic features of classical Rome. All right, let's get started. Where we left off was in South Asia. You know that. What's that country again in South Asia? You got that right. It is India. So we leave off in India, and we're going to make our way all the way over here to the Mediterranean. So we start off in South Asia. We're going to travel the Silk Road through Persia, through Greece, all the way to the Italian peninsula, mosey our way on down that Silk Road, and land ourselves here in Rome. Thinking about the Roman Empire, if Rome were a high school student, Rome would definitely win most popular. And that's just because it's the place to be in the Mediterranean region. Look, it's got places here to the east, it's got Greece over here, it's got friends over here in North Africa, it's definitely close to the Iberian Peninsula, it's kind of popular, it's very cosmopolitan. At the height of the Roman Empire, their territory expands all the way here through Western Asia, all the way here as far north as Great Britain or the United Kingdom today, Spain, and much of Northern Africa. So it's quite large. It's one of the largest empires that we're ever going to be able to study. Rome is famous because, one, the Roman Empire created the world's most important art, architecture, and engineering for 1,000 years. You guys are going to see a little bit more of that in class. We see the political structure seen as the height of civilization, and Rome has the strongest military in the western half of the world for thousands of years. Incredibly powerful. And Rome place is also the birthplace of Christianity. And despite its glory, it utterly collapsed and paved the way for something known as the Dark Ages in Europe. We'll talk more about that later. But the collapse of one singular empire is going to cause most of Europe to fall into oblivion. Sic transit gloria. Glory is going to fade not only from Rome, but from almost all of Western Europe after its collapse. Let's go back. We see that at the same time, we've got the Greco-Persian Wars, and we have Alexander the Great. And Rome is existing at the same time, becoming one of the most powerful. Rome is going to start off as a monarchy for its first 300 years. And then it's going to become a republic. Remember, a republic is kind of like a democracy, but it's not a direct democracy. The United States is a republic as well. The people elect representatives who vote on laws. Just like in the United States, we vote for senators and representatives from the House of Representatives to vote for laws in our favor. That's why it's important to vote, not for Donald Trump, Christian Pizarro. All right, the republic is going to give way to an empire. And that empire is going to happen for one reason, and that's going to be because of one person who's going to be the first Caesar or Kaiser. They're going to consolidate or put all of the power into the hands of one person, and they're going to kind of rule like monarchs until they eventually collapse. 476 BCE, or CE, 476 CE, 1,500 years ago, with this collapse is a really important number, again, for Western Europe. If we think about the Roman political society in brief, they start off as a monarchy, then they become a republic. Think king, republic, empire. King, republic, empire. The Caesars are in charge. And you always know a Caesar, not because they have good salads, but because they have really, really prominent headgear made out of olive branches. So if you want to wear one to school, you definitely can. Let's look at the Roman political social structure. So we've done the P for part of our spice. Now let's go to the S part of our spice. Oh, sorry, the Caesars die. And no, we're not going to talk about that just yet. But yes, you can definitely wear your crown of olive wreaths if you'd like to class and get a little extra credit point. It can be a real one or one handmade. How about that? Really great. Okay, The social structure. Throughout all the political phases, we have the wealthy patricians. They're the land-owning noblemen, and they're also going to make up the most important part of the government. They're going to make up the Senate. Yes, just like the Senate that we have today. Kind of should ring a bell from what you did for your homework. Then on the lower end, we have our plebeians or plebeians. They're all other free men, but they're kind of on the poor side. They're little poor classes. They don't have as much money as the patricians do here. They also have slaves that are quite at the bottom here. So we've got our patricians, and you can tell by her fancy hairdo. We've got our plebeians. They're kind of our poor working classes, and then we have our slaves. And those are going to be people that are captured from battle. At all levels, you have to remember that Rome is super patriarchal. That should sound familiar. Darn it, it's happening again. Yes, men are very, very much in charge. In fact, we have this idea of pater familias. Now, if any of you all speak Spanish, you should be able to see that pater, derived from pater, which is Latin, comes padre, and then familias for the family. So it's the father of the family. He's the head of the family. And usually the head of the family is the oldest living male relative that's in the household. They have power over everything, over what women say or do and what lower men say or do as well. If you think of ancient Rome kind of like a stadium, and if you think of it as the stadium seats, the patricians, they are super, super important. They get to be down here and they get a close eye event. They're on the floor seat watching this Beyonce concert. Yes, I brought up Beyonce because she's awesome. Next are the plebeians. The plebeians are here. They don't get as great of a view, and some of their view is kind of obstructed by the things that are around it. So again, we've got patricians at the bottom, plebeians here, but way up in the nosebleed seats that can only see maybe the little top of Beyonce's awesome weave are the slaves of the society. The slaves, and we're also going to put in there the gladiators, but more on that later. Love that movie and love those legs. Okay, let's keep on going here. We have the cross-section of the Colosseum once again. A Colosseum starts off with the arena floor. We've got the podium. We've got the, and it goes on and on and on, and these words that I can't remember, even though I took Latin when I was a freshman and sophomore in high school. The senators and special emperor's box. We've got the patricians with the equestrians. Here's a hint, and I'm going to put it as a bonus question on your quiz, and that is the equestrians would soon become the merchant class people. They would then become the merchants, and those are going to be really, really wealthy people. Then we've got our plebeians. So once again, we've got our leaders here, our patricians, our plebeians. Then the dark clothed, the non-citizen plebeians, the foreigners, the slaves. These are the people that don't have any rights. Even wealthy foreigners wouldn't have rights here. And then lastly, way up here in the nosebleeds, behind the slaves are the women. Because nobody cares about women in Roman culture, which is why I believe that Hera, or Juno, also known as Juno in Rome, is quite angry all the time. She's a goddess, if you could remember. Okay. The Roman political history, there's an emphasis on patricians versus patricians. Now, some things go down. So, in 509 BCE, the king is overthrown by a patrician named Lucius. And he's replaced by an elected council, by two of them, and an advisory senate. Well, the council is now going to be the highest position in Roman culture under the Republic. So after they're overthrown, they become the Republic. At first, only patricians could be consuls or senators. Consuls are going to be the highest paid position, or highest position in the Republic. They only hold their position for a year, however. Right now, in our Republic, the president has the highest paid position, but he holds his position for 4 years. This was a good way to check power and make sure not one person became too greedy or that they ever returned back to this monarchy. Thank you, Lucius, and thank you, Empire. Nobody else gets it. Okay. The plebeians refused to fight a war. And because the plebeians are like, hey, we have no representation in this government, there's nobody to protect us from unfair taxes, there's nobody to protect us from our rights being taken away, and so all the plebeians refuse to fight. Well, most patricians, just like Donald Trump, refused to go off and fight in the war. Thanks, Donald Trump, really needed you there in Vietnam. And so the patricians say, all right. So you guys can get somebody, you guys can elect people called tribunes, and the tribunes can then vote on laws on your behalf to make sure that we don't take too much advantage of you. This becomes really, really important because now the patricians have protection from unfair laws and different abuses. That's all going to end when it comes to 444 BCE and they become an empire. But more about that later. Just know the order here. Once again, monarchy, republic, empire. King, Senate, Caesar. Okay. The 12 tables of Rome are really, really important, and I think it's because it's mostly what we're going to base all of our rights onto as well. For the 12 tables in Rome, it's really about the patricians, about the wealthy and the rich fighting against the poor. So the wealthy and rich against the poor. The patricians and plebeians are always struggling for power because the plebeians outnumber the patricians. There's more of them, but yet they have fewer rights because they don't have as much money. One of the victories for the plebeians was to get the publication of the 12 tables of the law. Hence, it's kind of like the Code of Hammurabi that came 1,000 years earlier, in which they enact a set of laws that gives rights to all citizens, and it helps the plebeians be protected from the patricians. They put these 12 tablets in the center of Rome. Now, why? Why is it made public? You got that right, Jennifer. They made it public so that everybody could say that they knew what the law is. The 12 tables is the origin of innocent until proven guilty. They couldn't just put plebeians away just because they were plebeian because they were poor. You were deemed innocent until you had a trial, and then you were proven guilty or innocent. And then finally, they were going to apply these laws to foreigners in conquered territories, and they made it something called an international law. So while there's still this disparity in wealth between patricians and plebeians, the small number versus the large number, they have this modicum of justice that's happening here. We see this fight for justice, the same justice that we're fighting for today, in making sure that people, even though they don't have power, still have protection. Let this burn into your memory. Make a etch, make a drawing. But again, you can see people pointing towards the tablets so that they would all know what the laws are. So that if a plebeian was to be taken advantage of, he could go to the courts and he could say, it says on these 12 tablets that these are my rights. Okay. Let's talk about the expansion and the collapse of this empire. And we're going to basically go through 400 years within the next 5 months. Okay, height of the Roman Empire in 200 CE. Yes, that's 1,816 years ago. This is how big it is. Remember this. Remember it always. Persia, Greece, the Italian Peninsula, Rome, Western. Oops, sorry about that. What do we notice about the start of the Punic Wars? Well, Roman expansion starts with the Punic Wars, and if we look here, it's from 264 BCE to 146 BCE. That's a long time. And Rome faces its biggest enemy, Carthage. The state of Carthage is one bad mother, shut your mouth. They're a city-state with an empire on the North African side of the Mediterranean, and they're a force to be reckoned with. Carthage is well known for being an incredible military power. They also have an incredible naval power as well. And they also have a bad general, Hannibal. Hannibal is tough, and he almost wins by riding on elephants across the Alps, the mountains of the Alps, to Rome. But the Romans attacked Carthage, and Hannibal's forced to retreat. He thought he was going to crush the Roman soldiers with his giant elephants crossing the Alps. But in fact, they're crushed by him. Rome wins in the end. Rome wins in 146 BCE, and they do something as evil as they want to be. They walk into Carthage. They burn it down. But then, after they burn it to the ground, they're so angry that they've had to fight a war for so long that they then begin to spread salt on the ground. Now, why would they do that? Think about pouring salt. What happens when you put too much salt on something? It ruins it. They want to make sure that not only is Carthage ruined, but that it can never recover. They pour salt on the ground so that they cannot grow food, produce agriculture, which is the basis of most people's trade at this point, for years, decades to come. They're so angry. This is the start of Rome being kind of a brutal place. Oh, yeah. Once Carthage is gone, now the Mediterranean is Rome's for the taking, and you betcha Rome is going to go after it. They're weak, and Rome is going. It's just like, once again, if a girl breaks up with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's sad, he's ready for the taking from anybody around. Like, people are looking. Alexis is like, hey, I hear he's weak. I hear he's available. I'm going right after him. Once again, we can see Hannibal and Hannibal's sadness as he thinks he's going to win, but he's defeated by Rome. But look at those elephants. I don't think any elephants were harmed in the making of this picture. Okay, so Rome, Carthage, they believe that they're going to attack Rome over the Alps, but Rome goes to Carthage and smashes it to death. Hannibal follows and is completely defeated. He has to retreat. They pour salt on it so that it can never recover, and it's theirs for the taking. After the Punic Wars, Rome expands like crazy. After their evilness, Rome expands like crazy. They take over the Mediterranean in pieces. And they have to be able to do that. And they do that. Well, let me get to that in a moment. Rome is still a republic at this point, and it's able to expand big time now that its biggest enemy, Carthage, is completely out of the way, that it's gone. Northern Europe still are barbarians, and so they're not unified yet. There's nobody to fix it. Rome also sees that Greece is weak because Alexander the Great is dead. And they also see that the Parthian Persians are weak after Alexander as well. All around Rome, they're weak. They're all basically on the verge of sleeping, and Rome thinks this is the perfect time for me to steal. The Romans also need to expand because they see lots of the wealth in the Eastern Mediterranean. They see like there's lots of resources across Persia and Greece. And they need slaves. They need slaves, and they need people in order to supply food and to supply money. Rome is also, the generals in Rome also want to conquer in order to get glory. Soldiers want to become wealthy and get wealthy. But Rome has to continue to expand after it expands, which is kind of funny. So every time it takes over another country, it becomes bigger and bigger. And because it becomes bigger and bigger, they have to protect themselves even more. So they make their military even bigger and bigger and bigger. One of the reasons on our notes that we got incorrect is that some of you were saying that you misunderstood how Rome expanded with why Rome expanded. So how they expanded was through their military conquest. But why they expanded was because they needed resources. They, poor soldiers wanted to get glory. They also wanted land, and they wanted loot. And the rich soldiers, they wanted to get promotions, and they wanted to get fame. So Rome needs resources. Soldiers want fame and fortune, and they also need to protect their empire. Those are the three reasons why they begin to expand, but how they expand is because of their incredible, well-trained military. So, Rome beats out the Macedonians, Alexander's people. They get their hands on Greece. They fall in love with Greece. They've wanted Greece for a long time. They love Greeks Greece. They loved Greek culture, and they loved Greek philosophy like Socrates and Aristotle and Pericles. And so they modeled themselves on Greece. Educated Romans spoke and wrote Greek. They modeled their culture on Greece. Their architecture, their gods, all of it is stolen or modeled off of Greece. The Roman generals attack northern tribes north and west and conquer Western Europe and the entire Mediterranean region. And that's just because they have this incredible military force. Their military is their key to their success. There's a saying that they had, that their military was well trained, well fed, and well rewarded. They're ruthless, they're vicious, and they're strong. They're ruthless, they're vicious, and they're strong. Think gladiator here. Then after they're able to conquer most of their surrounding area, then they attack the Persians and they start conquering the Middle East, including Jerusalem and Israel. And if this is the time when Jesus of Nazareth is going to be born as well, he's going to be born during Roman occupation of the Middle East and Israel. But they're not all bad, because they do offer citizenship in part to many of the people that they conquer, which is kind of nice in some ways. So, by 200 CE, they're either going even further. They're including much of Egypt here as well. When we think about Cleopatra, this is the time period that we're talking about. The Roman Empire is on the verge of collapse towards the turn of the millennia, 44 BCE. It's the same reasons that we see before. With all this expansion, patricians get more and more slaves from conquered territories. They continue to expand. Plebeians get poorer, more crowded, and out of work. The richer get richer, the poorer get poorer. All that leads to civil unrest. It's the same old story over and over and over again. We saw it with the Han, we saw it with the Qin, we see it with the Gupta. We constantly see this is the same thing that happens with every single empire. It brings them down. Political leaders began fighting to see who's going to get on top, who's going to be able to lead. But there's a problem. It's because now you have civil distress amongst the patricians and the plebeians. You have political distress amongst the political leaders, and all the while, there's this growing military force. The military is strong, and these generals are charismatic. And if you know anything about the army, you know that military soldiers are incredibly loyal, and their lawyers are no longer loyal to the political leaders or to leaders of society. Instead, they're loyal to their generals, and that's going to lead the way for a couple of generals. We're going to have two sets of triumvirates. This is going to be the first triumvirate. It's my favorite. It's led up of Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar. Yes, Julius Caesar. They're an unofficial political alliance, and they're going to control the Republican Senate. And they're basically going to cause kind of like this coup. Julius calls himself Caesar. He's a general of an army that's in Gaul. It's in Western Europe, which is going to become France. So it's in Gaul. The triumvirate falls apart here. So he leaves off Pompey and Crassus, and he decides, hey, who cares about them? I'm going to take power for myself. So Caesar brings his army across the Rubicon River into Rome, and then he declares himself the Emperor of Rome. But he's only going to do it for 6 months until he says, until we get under control here. I'll only be in charge for 6 months until we get under control. But that 6 months lasts for 10 years. He does some good things. He creates lots of reform, but he also wastes a lot of money on his people and on himself and on his golden crown. And in 444 BCE, after 14 years, he says, hey, I'm going to become dictator for life. That ain't gonna happen, because his friends, including his best friend Brutus, decide, we love you, Julius, but you got to go. And so they stab him literally in the back. Please watch this. Brutus gets him, Pompey comes from behind, Crassus gets him, and lastly they kill him and they throw him overboard, and he is done for. Julius Caesar looks at all of his friends in the eye as blood is dripping from his mouth and the holes in his body, and he looks up and he says, "Et tu, Brute?" Meaning, "You too, Brutus, you two would stab me in the back." And they're like, "Hey, we had to do it all for the country, for the good of the country." Those are some lovers of the country. All right. So again, we go from monarchy to republic to empire. We got Julius Caesar. Caesar thinks way too much of himself. They kill the man. They crush him. They're like, "Hey, I'm sorry. You can't take power for yourself. We're a republic here. That's the way we do it. Lucius didn't die in vain." So anyway, Julius Caesar has a son. His son is named Octavian. Octavian and his boys, Antony, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, looks like he's got a little broken nose there. Mark Antony and Lepidus, they start a second triumvirate. We see how that's going to go. Octavian's going to say, like, "No, sorry, kind of want to be crowned myself. I think I want to take this. I want to take my dad's job. I want to become senator as well. I want to become dictator. I want to become an emperor myself." So that second triumvirate was fun with Octavius, Mark Antony, and Lepidus. It's an official institution, unlike the first, which basically ended the republic. Octavius takes all the power for himself, and the great month of October is then named after him, and he then says, "I'm Augustus Caesar." He changes his name. He basically goes from Jay-Z to Hova, which I feel is a problem. They feel that it's a problem too. But nobody really is bothered by it for one reason that we'll talk about in just a moment. Anyway, Augustus means magnificent or great. And so he becomes the magnificent Caesar, and he becomes emperor in 27 BCE. He lives and he rules for 40 more years. And people don't really mind because he kind of does it a little well. Again, we've got monarchy, republic, empire, Julius Caesar dies. He's replaced by Octavian, who becomes Caesar. The Roman Empire under Octavius is the golden age of Rome. The only problem is it's not really a republic anymore. It's just not a democracy. The Senate still technically exists, but Octavius and the remaining Caesars are going to have all of the power, which is going to lead to Rome's eventual downfall. Rome at this point is going to have the strongest military in the Western world. It's wealthy through its tribute. Remember, tribute means taxes in this case, and its conquests and its slaves. And it's going to have huge cultural, political, and military achievements because it's building on the achievements of the people that it conquers. Rome's government is kind of stable, even though the citizens don't have real representation. And Augustus kind of understands that. And so instead of calling himself Emperor Augustus, he calls himself the first man to try to kind of ease people's problems, that people really know the deal. But because they're doing really well and they're really wealthy, nobody complains. This wealthy time of Rome is called the Pax Romana, literally meaning the peace of Rome. We're going to talk in your next one, after you watch Crash Course video and take notes on that one, you'll also learn about like what else causes golden ages. Typically, golden ages that happen throughout all of the empires are these time periods of peace, prosperity through trade, and strong militaries that avoid invasion. But eventually Rome's empire is going to collapse, and we'll talk a little bit more about why it collapses. I actually ended 50 seconds early. It was 30 minutes. Hopefully you got some good notes over this. You can either reread your notes or listen to this again, but I don't know why you'd like to listen to my voice once more. And I'll see you on Thursday. I hope that you have an excellent outcome on your quiz. It's just 5 questions over ancient Rome taken directly from this, and that you do well. Ta-ta for now. Bye-bye.